to your strength, you were always available. One of Dad's strengths is he uses his gift of cooking to bring us all together. So he cooks meals for all of us, and we all come running still. If we hear Dad's cooking, somehow everybody shows up at their house.
Hey there, welcome back to LO Mama. We hope you're having a great day, and we hope that this makes it even better. We're just so thankful that you would come listen here with us.
Yeah, this has been so sweet. We've laughed at ourselves. We've ended up bawling.
Yes. All right. Well, today, what should we talk about?
I think we've been going around a bit, but I think we landed on parenting and what kids need in different stages. And you have 6 children.
Yes.
What are their age ranges now?
The youngest is 21 and the oldest is 34. And but I have grandbabies now, so I'm kind of reliving the baby toddler stage all again, which is really fun. That toddler stage is no joke. Like the 2-year-olds are, they're in that phase of when they don't get what they want, like falling out on the floor and all of those things. So I'm kind of like reliving it and seeing it again, but they're such sweet kids and it's so much fun. And whenever you're from this perspective, you're just like, oh, it's a phase, they'll get through it. But when you're in it, it's exhausting. I know. Yes.
Yeah. So we have 5. I think we talked about this earlier in the season, but our oldest is 23 and our youngest is 14. But our youngest 3, we had 3 in 3 years. And the youngest 2 are like a year apart. Yeah. And so there was just a lot of things happening all at once. And I felt like I was kind of stuck in one stage for a lot of years. Yeah. Not in a bad way, but just like that was my reality. And just trying to go out places and navigate. Like you just knew you had the trusty ones where if you said like come back or stop at the road, you knew they were going to come through for you. Like Maisey. Maisey's my girl. I just knew I could always rely on her. And then you just had those, I got a couple of wild cards in there. Yeah. So, just trying to learn how to communicate with them at different stages. Yeah. And I feel like I learn later that actually, when they're little and they're tiny and they're babies or in that toddler first years, you're in that kind of cop phase. Yeah. And they need everything from you. Yeah. You do everything for them and you're choosing. You're choosing when they go to bed, whether they want to or not. You're choosing what they eat. You're choosing, most likely what they wear. Yes. My kids were amazing. They let me dress them in anything, anytime. Like nobody had a strong opinion about anything. So that was the most fun.
That's nice.
But that was probably the only thing they didn't have strong opinions about.
My grandson, John Shepherd, is so cute because it cracks me up because Mary Kate has always dressed them like just so cute and like Southern, kind of like Southern with like collars and that kind of thing. Willie calls him Smock Boy because he would have little smock things. Well, now that he's 4, he has an opinion on what he wears and he wants to wear blue jeans and he's got like a little snakeskin belt, like literally, and a baseball cap. Yikes. So he's all of a sudden now just like exerting his like full boy.
Yeah, his autonomy.
That's right. Yeah. So Mary Kate still reserves Sunday, like church. She gets to pick what he wears. And so he's in these cute little like matching outfits or whatever. He wears his cowboy boots though with it because it's like his little way. But yeah, he wakes up, he takes off his pajamas and puts on his like blue jeans and like all his like
his signature look,
total like boy look, because he needs his jeans because he needs pockets. He's got to stuck all the little things in his pockets. His belt, he always has something like hanging off his belt, like a little magnifying glass or a flashlight or something like that. It's such a cute little phase.
I love that. And I used to feel I was doing the best job when I could choose what they ate. Yeah. And pretty early on, not Maisey, I'm sure she'll bring this up when she's on here later. The things, I was so young. I remember I used to give her this drink when she was a baby. Yeah. And it wasn't until she was 2 that I realized you were supposed to dilute it.
Oh no.
I don't know. One of the potential health issues I was throwing away. But kind of maybe when she was about 2, I really got into healthy eating and really wanted them to have their salmon and their broccoli and all these things. And I was never going to be that mum that cooked them different things. And I know that's what they wanted. But I was like, no, we're having trout crusted with almonds.
Are they good eaters now?
Well, they actually, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
But I just always persevered. I was like, this is what we're doing. We're doing this one thing and you do not have to eat the whole thing. My philosophy has always been just try a bite.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to say everyone has to like everything.
Right. Yes.
But I think it's not fair to try something at least once.
That's right. I think that's so good. And I've seen studies where it says like you have to try things. And if you just keep presenting it to kids, then they will. I have some grandbabies that are like great eaters, will eat anything like spicy food, anything, and others that are like really picky. So I definitely do. I think it does depend on the child. It's like the parent can help and can shape it and can, you can say like, you're going to try, but some just are naturally born like more picky than others.
Yeah, two of mine didn't like chicken or potatoes. And I was like, that's not going to be a thing.
Like, how can you not like
what
that?
What else do you expect me to cook? But I mean, that cop phase is very real, but then there's this natural point of evolution and you actually can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that would be controlling to keep them in the cop phase. And kind of parenting experts say the next phase that you are supposed to naturally move into is like the coach. And so, you're still the boss. And they're part of the team, but there is a little bit more, give and take. And it's not as firm as a cop, but it's still strong encouragement and leadership.
I do think in the early ages, I think it is really important to develop respect, for the parent. And I think that respect will carry you through. But if you don't put that in your children at a young age, if they don't understand, ultimately love is, that's the ultimate. That's what we need to give our children first and foremost. But next, I think there is whenever your babies are little and then of course, you just do everything for them because they're babies. You have to do everything. But then when they hit that toddler phase, they do have to understand that boundary and respect, like the mom's the mom and they're the authority and they're the ones, because safety, like you mentioned, like who's gonna stop when you tell them to stop when you're in a parking lot. You need to be able to say, stand right here and do not move. And they need to hear you and listen and respect you in that. But whenever you kind of place that the way it should be, in a way like the authority of the parents and the child comes up under that authority in a good and healthy way. When you get to the next phase where the coach, and you can just cheer them on a little bit and encourage them, they understand that respect and authority, and it makes things easier kind of as the different phases go through.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
I know how difficult it can be to find wholesome, good quality content for your kids and for my grandkids. So I want to tell you about Minnow. I absolutely love Minnow, and it makes finding wholesome content for your kids and families easy. It's a great partner for parents and grandparents like me looking for ways to support and develop the faith of their little ones. Minnow is a streaming service for kids that offers faith-based content that grown-ups can trust. They've got lots of great shows like Life and Grow Bible, Young David, and 5-Minute Family Devotionals. It's a great way for parents and kids to draw closer together while drawing closer to Jesus. Minnow's shows and devotionals touch on a wide variety of topics that will keep the kids engaged while filling their minds with thoughtful, trustworthy, and character-building content. It's great for family movie nights, sick days, or when you just need some downtime, because raising good kids can be exhausting, let's face it. I really love Minnow for our kids and grandkids. It's been so sweet to see them watch and learn things about the Bible and learn things about good character and good values through their shows on Minnow. So go visit gominnow.com today to start your free trial. Plus, you can use the code LOMAMA to get your first month for free. That's code LOMAMA at gominnow.com for 1 free month of the Minnow Kids streaming service. Sign up for Minnow Kids today.
And I think like the cop phase, you maybe don't need to explain as much. Like a cop doesn't need to say, I want you to get out of the car because he says get out of the car. And so it's more like short, sharp, instructions. But I think it is really important as they progress to actually respect them as people and be like, well, why can't I have that? Everyone else has that. And to actually explain your why. And I think sometimes that does help them as they grow and develop, and it respects them as their own people.
Yes.
And then the next phase that you're supposed to move into is counselor, where you're not necessarily the driving force anymore. And I think that's been a really important phase as I've watched my kids grow up. And some people don't want other people speaking into their kids' life. And I think that's where we get it wrong, because they're going to anyway. And so actually really encouraging them, actively encouraging them when you know, look, hey, if you're struggling, go talk to this person.
Yes, I think that's so good.
And you don't have to say it can only be that person. But you can say, oh, look, here's a couple of people in your life. You know, they're so for you. Like, you don't have to talk to mum and dad about that. We're here, but why don't you go and get their perspective? Or if you don't understand mum and dad's no, why don't you go talk to them about it?
Yes.
And it's almost a safe place to deconstruct and ask questions.
Yeah.
Because you know those people have your back and they're not divisive forces, but you're not the only voice allowed to speak. So that's a really important kind of phase.
Yeah.
And that's all about like validating their instincts and, you know, encouraging them to keep seeking not just other people's insight and wisdom, but also ultimately God's.
Yeah.
And I know my youngest, he's homeschooling right now because he's in a soccer academy, and 3 of my boys are in soccer academy. They're amazing soccer players. And he really wants to go to a mainstream school. And he's got a very specific idea about which school he'd like to go to because his friends. And I kind of got to the point where like, I need to be more of a counselor in this situation. You know, obviously it would be a lot easier for him to stay where he is. But this is an important decision, and I don't get to make all of the decisions as my kids get older. And I've just kept saying to him, I would really just keep praying about it. Like, ask God to confirm it. Like if you have a real sense of urgency, like, no, I really do want to apply, or no, God's actually taken that away now. Like, come back, let's keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen with other instances where he has gone away and prayed about it. And he's like, oh, I knew straight away. And that kind of gives you confidence that we don't have to always be the final authority.
That's
and then
right.
the last phase is the one that we might dread a little bit, which is, or you might not even think about when they're 3 and 4 and 5, but is the consultant phase where you're moving more towards detachment. And that's more about, I think we talked in one of the early episodes, that adult child book I'm reading where the subtitle is keep your welcome mat out and your mouth shut. That's kind of how I would describe the consultant phase.
Ask you. Yeah. And I think that's as adult children. I don't know if we talked about that, but that is one thing that I try to do is just be like, wait for them to ask for the advice. And they will, if you've developed this relationship, if you've kind of moved through these stages with your children and you've been a counselor and you've been all that, you will get to the point to where they will come and want to consult with you. You don't have to like insert your opinion. You just wait. And even if, you know, you see things that you're like, okay, that could be different, or that could be better, or I could actually help you in this if you ask me. But, you know, wait for them to ask you. And then you're able to kind of speak that into their life.
Yeah. And did you find it natural, like talking about these phases, do you kind of look back and think, you know, I did see like more of a natural progression. I think we talked about this one morning when we were having coffee.
Yeah, you read these and I had never heard these before and I love them. And I was like, oh, yeah, that does feel, that feels right. You know, it does. There is a point that cop phase that's kind of like not as fun because you have to be consistent with your discipline. You have to like, I had one that used to say I had to just like keep under my thumb. Like he was the one that I sat beside me if we went out to eat. I was like, anyone else you can go sit at the end of the table, but you're going to sit right here. You know, that one, there was some, and I had Will and Bella were only 10 months apart because we adopted Will in December, got pregnant with Bella in January. So they were 10 months apart. And then we adopted Rowdy and he's 3 months younger than Bella. So we had three middle schoolers, 3, you know, all at the same time. And yeah, definitely there are ones that you have to like cop a little bit more, you know. Yes. But I do think if you do go through these stages in a healthy way, you will get there. And but there are some things that do start young. If you didn't start young, if you didn't develop kind of that respect when they are a toddler, then your teen years are going to be more difficult, but that doesn't mean you can't bring it back, you know, because it really, I think ultimately, just like our relationship with our Heavenly Father, it's about relationship. It is about relationship. God desires a relationship with us, and we desire a relationship with our children. And that's what is most important. And so at any point, you know, you can come back and redeem that relationship. Just stay in it, stay in that relationship. And, you know, there's been times as a mom that I've had to apologize, be like, you know, I didn't get that right. Like I didn't I thought I did the best I could. I was trying, but I didn't get that right. But I think that one thing that my mom and I have talked about quite a bit, and I think is important though, is that you do display a confidence in your parenting to your children, because God gave these children to you. Like he put them in your family for a reason. There's of the 8 billion people on this earth, he gave you your children. And he gave your children to you, And so I think that there is, I want to encourage moms who are listening to have confidence in that. Know that there's no other person your child will want to be their mom. There's no one else. You are that child's mom for a reason, and he's put you there in that role. And so be confident in that and know that God will carry you through. He will give you the things that you need. And if there's things that you don't have, there's tools or skills that you don't have, you can go find it. Ask someone who you look at their life and you think, oh, they maybe their kids look like they're doing pretty good. Yeah. So go to them and ask them, what advice would you give me? Or open a book. There's a book that I've loved, or there's a series of books by Jody Burnt called Praying Scriptures Over Your Children. She has praying scriptures over your teenagers, praying scriptures over your adult children. But, there are things that if you feel like you didn't do things right, you can turn that around. You can develop a relationship with your children and just seek wise counsel in that.
Yeah, I love that you recommended those books. They have been a staple in my quiet time for years. I can't even remember how I found them. And there's a little part in there, which I guess maybe they're designed for people who have 2 children, like a boy and a girl. But there's a line where you write the name, and mine is the same kid's name through the whole book. But they are the most helpful prayers, because sometimes you do go through these 4 phases of parenting and different things are happening in their lives and it can be scary. You don't know how to pray. And so Jody provides these phenomenal scriptures that you can pray along. And I've seen God use that in such a powerful way. But I also loved what you're saying about saying sorry to our kids. And if you are a parent that can't say sorry or doesn't feel sorry, then there's something wrong in that authority system. And I had a situation recently with our oldest 2, and we were out. They're in Chicago right now. My son's a senior at Wheaton College. Our daughter's graduated. She's working out there. And so we had the sweetest time hanging out and having breakfast. And over breakfast, our son was just chatting. And, he just said, I don't feel like you prepared me enough for adulthood in terms of finances and loans and I was so grateful that he said that. And thinking about these phases, I remember looking back thinking, because I had 5 children, I feel like I kind of parented them all the same for a long time. And almost like Maisey and Noah went from the cop to consultant phase. So it's almost like I'm making all the decisions, and then I'm like, and on you go, God bless you. And there wasn't much preparation in between. My plate was full, so I can give myself grace, but I do not need to defend myself. And so I was like, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? And everything was disarmed, and it was this beautiful moment. And honestly, it was just such a sweet day, and it wasn't a deflating moment. It was like a strengthening moment. And it's helped me with my other, I have one of our kids right now doing a consumer math course, and he's like, why am I doing this? I said, well, because I did not prepare your older 2 for life. So you will learn about mortgages and interest rates and loans. Because sometimes I love that Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. And that's that beautiful picture of giving grace and being, receiving grace.
We moms love seeing our kids grow up and chase their dreams. So when John Lick started his own coffee roasting business right here in West Monroe, I was thrilled. Kings Lane Coffee Roaster is the name he chose since it's roasted right here on Kings Lane at the Duck Commander Warehouse. Kings Lane Coffee is small batch, roasted with precision, passion, and quality in every cup. And it's even delivered right to your door. Kings Lane Coffee believes in sustainability and fair trade, so we only use beans sourced from reputable farms that prioritize quality and ethical practices. The house blend is a medium roast that's available in both espresso and drip roast. So no matter how you take it, we've got coffee for you. Taste the difference that local small batch roasting really does make. I love Kings Lane coffee. It's so good. It's really fun because it's roasted right here in our warehouse. So our warehouse smells like good coffee all the time. And John Lake's always here to make us a good cup. If you love coffee, you really need to try Kings Lane. So visit kingslanecoffeeroaster.com today for local small batch coffee delivered right to your door. And when you use the code MAMA at checkout, receive 10% off your order. That's kingslanecoffeeroaster.com, and be sure to use promo code MAMA, M-A-M-A, at checkout to receive 10% off your order.
I think what you said there is in hearing from your son is just like listening. I think that's such an important, it's a gift. Like we all want to be heard. We all want to be listened to. And you can give that to your children at 2, just listen, talk to them. And then as they grow, I remember when ours were teenagers, they would love to talk at night, and it was so sweet. Like I look back at that time and it's just the sweetest moments, but it would be like one would come in, I'd go to bed, one would come in like 10 o'clock, one would be on the end of my bed, then another one would come on the other side of the bed, then another one would, and then they just kind of all would end up. And then by midnight, I'm like so tired and wanting to kick them out. And they laugh about it because I'd be like, all right, well, good night. And then no one would move. And then 20 minutes later, okay, well, great talking to you. Good night, and then finally like, all right, everybody out of my room, go to bed, But it's such a sweet, I'm so thankful for that they wanted to talk to me, and I needed to listen to them. And I think that teenagers, that's something that they need from parents, is just that time and just that undivided attention to be heard and to be listened to. And that's a gift that you can give your kids. If you feel like you can't give them anything else right now, just give them that, and you might be in a place with your children that you feel like they don't really want to talk to you. And I had different ones that were different in it, that I had to kind of pull it out of. I had to ask more questions, but just don't give up on pursuing your children. Keep pursuing them. I wrote down a couple of things that I think are kind of like our jobs as parents. And I don't know if this is helpful, but I was thinking about what are some things that we need to do to prepare our kids. And one, I think the most important one is just to show them what God's love looks like, because that unconditional love that we experience from the Father, we're their first glimpse of that. So for them to see in us that there is absolutely nothing you can do that will make me not love you. And I remember having that conversation with our kids whenever they did things that they, felt like they messed up or they screwed up. Just having that conversation, there is absolutely nothing that you can do that would make me not love you or make you not be my son or my daughter. You will always be my son or my daughter, no matter what. I'll love you no matter what you do. And so I think just giving that gift to your children helps them to understand God and His love and who He is in their life and the way He's going to be there for them no matter what. Letting them know that your home is a place that they can always come back to. So I think that's our first job as parents. Second, I think is to prepare them for the tough things that go on in the world. You are going to experience tough times. And whenever ours were little, I had two words, two kind of values that I thought I needed to instill in them. And that was strength and kindness. And strength because I was there are going to experience tough times. And I've always felt like I want their roots to be really deep so that when the tough times come and the winds blow, they're going to be able to stand. They're going to be that tree that can stand, that their faith is going to stand because their roots are deep. So I think preparing them for that and ways you can do that is putting God's word into their life, putting prayer, helping them to understand prayer and how they can go to God in that, helping them to have those deep roots in their faith can prepare them for their life. And then the last, I think, is, and I don't know that I even really understood this as much until they got older, was just protect those things that God put in them. Because when our kids got older, I went back and read some of the journal entries that I had written about them when they're 2 and 3. And I just understood even more that God created them unique and original. And He put things in their life that were so special and unique to each one. And our job as a mom is not to grow them up in the way like we think they should go.
Right.
And not to like say, oh, I want you to be this, a doctor or a lawyer or this or whatever. We kind of look at them, but to say, I want you to be the things that God put in you. I want you to be able to live out the calling that God has on your life, and the ways we protect them from things that can make them have insecurities or shame or feelings that they aren't enough, by helping kind of put this protection around them of love and of grace and of mercy and kindness and all the things so that they can grow up to live out what God actually put in their life. Because I saw things that, for instance, in Sadie's life, she, from a young age, she was preaching on the coffee table at 5 years old. She was so interested in God and Jesus and heaven and hell and all the things. There was a point where I was like, okay, this might be a little, she's 5. She's asking me about hell. And I'm like, oh, okay. But she, had that in her life. But also she had a lot of fear and anxiety. She was the one that, cried every day for school, her first year of school. She did not speak in school for years because she was scared of getting in trouble. She didn't want to disappoint people. She didn't want to. So she also had that. If I had allowed those things to be what kind of like tangled out what God had put in her life in speaking God's truth and God's word, I've allowed the fear to continue in her life, the anxiety, those things to say like, oh yeah, you actually are shy. You can't, you don't need to, you don't have to get in front of people. If I had allowed those fears to come up, then it would have stifled the things that God placed in her life. So as a mom, I think it's part of our role to kind of like notice those things and protect and help our kids grow through the things that have the potential to kind of strangle out what God puts in their life.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much. And I love how you're saying that you could have spoken one thing. And sometimes parents can unknowingly project something from their own fear and insecurity onto a child, which then becomes their identity. But how you kind of just recognize this is something I'm going to foster and encourage and speak life over. I know one of my kids is just not a natural communicator. And I found that quite scary. And do I let them be an internal processor? Is that healthy? But what, one day they get married and they're going to be in a relationship. And is that person going to want them to internally process everything? So I really asked God, I was like, do I want to try and make this child like me? Or do I want to try and help them be the person that you've called them to be? And I was praying about it. And I felt like God said, just write him a letter. And so I wrote him a letter and I was like, hey, just wondering how you're doing. It's going to put a couple of subjects, like write whatever you think. And so I just put a couple of headers like school, family, friends. I mean, that kid poured out like a tap. I was in shock. So I'm like, are we going to be writing letters to each other? Or how can I take this from like a letter? So I was like, oh my gosh, you did such an amazing job. Like, can we talk about any of this? Or, and so he's like, no. Okay, let's do another letter. But we gradually got to the stage of him just writing down and then just me saying, oh, can you recap that in a couple words or phrases, and trying to teach him, not to emasculate him, but to try and teach him, like, can you just put some words to that so that I can understand all of those major things that are happening on the inside. And now he's become much more of a talker, much more of a communicator. So I think rather than just saying, yeah, he doesn't communicate, he's an introvert or he's an internal processor, it's like saying, well, I want to do this gently, but help you become the healthiest, fullest version. So I love that. I hear you with that journey with Sadie too. I love that.
That's so good. Okay, I feel like we could talk about this forever because we're basically going through like 20, 30 years of life. But I hope there's been some things in here that have like encouraged you and maybe there's things that you hadn't thought about before, or there's things that you were like, oh yeah, a reminder. So I hope as a mom if you're not a mom yet, that these are things that you can just write down, think about this, write down. How do you want to be as a mom? How can you think about what you want to be for your future children. So we're so excited that y'all are here, and we hope that the words that we speak are encouragement, are cheering you on, and are just giving you a little bit of hope and joy for the day.
Yeah, and we learn on the go. Like we're all learning all the time, and we don't get a manual with these children. But there's so much grace. And so sometimes we talk about things that we've been listening to, and pretty much always it's music or audiobooks. But maybe this will help someone out there. But I've been listening to this great radio show by Mark Gregston called Parenting Today's Teens. Because I've already had, I have 3 teenagers right now. I already had 2 before that. It's like 5 total, but they're all so different. Yes. And also the time that my youngest ones are living in is so different than the time my older 2 are living in. And so I have found this so practical. I write stuff down. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. I didn't know. I'm not a 17-year-old boy. I'm not a 14-year-old boy. So that is such a great thing to listen to. So maybe that's a resource that might help you today, and some of those Jodie Berndt books too. So yeah.
All right, Sadie and Maisey, this has been so much fun just hearing from you in each of these episodes. We love having these episodes with y'all. But so for the rest of the season, we don't want to lose your voices. So we just thought, okay, how about we just we're going to try to ask you one question, and we want to hear your just takeaway from the episode. All right. So this one was all about what kids need. And so the question to you is what would you say is the one thing, if you could be okay, here's one gift that you can give your children, and this is what I would say it is. Is there a way you can kind of pull it all down to just one thing? I know there's a lot.
Yeah, I actually, as soon as you asked me that, and we had talked about it just a second before we started this podcast, and I immediately thought about it because it's something that you've given all of us, which is very impressive, especially with how busy you are. You never seem too busy for us. And I think the biggest thing you can give your kids that you gave us is availability, and you still give us that. I don't even know how you answer our phone calls because you constantly are getting phone calls and you have 6 kids, but you always do. And if you can't, you call back and you just make yourself available. You never seem, even if you're doing a million things, it's never been oh, I'm too busy for that, or I'm too busy to pick up the phone. I'm too busy to have dinner with you. I'm too busy to play a game of pickleball or play a card game at night. You just made yourself super available. And I think that that's one thing that we've talked about with Dad. He's so available now to the grandkids, and he goes and jumps on the trampoline with Honey. And he was not like that when we were a kid. And back in the day, I used to be oh, I wanted you to do that with me or whatever. But, he didn't really have that example from Papa Phil necessarily. So he didn't necessarily know to give that. But now seeing him as a grandpa give it to the grandkids and my kids, it's even a greater joy. I'm so just happy seeing him step into just being available to do the funny, silly little things with Honey. I think Honey's captured his heart.
Yeah.
But I try to do that for our kids. I just want them to know I'm available. And I think it takes a challenge, because it's so easy to just be on your phone or be distracted or be whatever. But just making sure that she knows if she asks me hey, do you want to go play Shrek and Princess Fiona? Because we like to play that I'm Shrek and she's Princess Fiona, or I'm Donkey half the time. But I just want to be available. And so I'll hit my knees and say, get on my back, Fiona, I'm the donkey now. And I don't know, I really want to give that to her because that's something that you and Dad in different ways gave to us. I'm so grateful for, and something I'm so grateful to see y'all give to our kids as well.
Aw, so good. I love that. Maisey?
Yeah, I would say so many things are coming to my mind. I would say the gift of prayer you've given us. I know, I didn't appreciate it when I was younger, but now I know that I can be either driving to a doctor's appointment, or I could be going to an interview, or I could just be having a bad day. And knowing that when I phone you or Dad up, you aren't going to splat out all of these words. You will go to prayer, and I know with confidence after every phone call we have, it will end in prayer. It will. And I think that used to get on my nerves when I was younger. Or, when I had that time where I was really questioning my faith. But I see that those prayers were all deposits in my life. And it did teach me that in all things we pray, in all things we go, and we go to God in prayer, we do. And I know my brothers would feel the same. I know they would say the same. But I also would say a gift that you have given us that has become a value to me, that now I think, oh, when I start a family one day, I want this to be a high value, is that you've had this open door where people have been able to come into our family and feel like family. So, for example, like Gary, who's our godfather, but he is so a part of our family, and he's brought a part. He's almost brought a way of being with us that maybe we've not experienced before, and he's been able to add that into our lives. Like, but he's, Gary, he's my godfather, but he would drive me to boarding school when my family lived in California, and he would check up on me, and he'd drive to come see me. Or even the guy who comes over and does the maintenance stuff. He's weirdly become a part of our
Dave's
family.
like, I'm doing the photos of your wedding.
Dave, honestly, I did tell him, he was like fixing a light, and I was like, if I invited you to my wedding, would you say yes? He was like, are you engaged? I said, no. I was just thinking about it. I want you at my wedding. But he's also brought a sweetness, and just thinking, even our friend Donna Stewart, she has brought this immense wisdom into my life. But I'm saying that because I've only got to know that, and I've only got to meet those people because you invited them into our homes first, and you set the tone of them being family. Yeah. And also, you could have, you met Donna before me. You could have kept Donna to yourself, rightly so. She's amazing. But you actually thought, when I was in a season of total despair, you had the thought of they should meet. And that I've only been able to be friends with her and grow so much, and know what God says about me, and know who God is in another deeper level through her friendship, because you allowed me to be friends with her. You thought to connect us. So that's a gift that you've given us.
That's great.
That's really good.
I would echo that with the gift of just hospitality, that you and Dad have brought so many people into our homes that are different than us, and it's taught us how to love people well, and love people like they're our brothers and sisters in Christ, even when they're different than us. And that's something that I think Dad has, how when I said earlier, to your strength, you were always available. One of Dad's strengths is he uses his gift of cooking to bring us all together. So he cooks meals for all of us, and we all come running still. If we hear Dad's cooking, somehow everybody shows up at their house. Or if not, we're texting, Dad, you cooking anything tonight? We're still asking, but it's brought us all around the table. Yeah. And then y'all also inviting other people around our table has stretched us and helped us learn so much about the world and about each other. Even the gift of adoption that y'all brought us to have more siblings, which has been like amazing to even just get to learn from them, but just love them like they really are our blood. And so that's been like a cool thing. So the hospitality gift is a huge gift.
I love that. I love what y'all shared, thinking about that, what kids need, and how like sometimes it feels like pressure as a mom, like, okay, I have to provide everything my kid needs, but like saying that it's other people that you bring into your kid's life that can speak into them at different times. I think that's so important to know. Like, you don't have to do it all. Like, other people can speak into your children's life and can be a real impact, and you can just be that connector of the dots person for your children at those different moments in their life. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it was fun to hear from y'all about that.